I believe this is a Canadian movie and it was actually recommended by a viewer. I hadn't even heard about it before, but it looked interesting, so I gave it a shot. And the story here follows a sort of survivalist family that lives in a small cabin in the woods. But life is not necessarily all rainbows and unicorns, because there appears to be a predator prowling the nearby woods. That's pretty much all I'm gonna say about the plot, but let's just say that things get gradually more interesting the deeper into it we get. Now, my first impressions were that this is probably a pretty low budget movie. I mean, the dialogue is just a little bit wooden, the acting isn't generally phenomenal, and the story is just one that lends itself perfectly to low budget filmmaking too. Now, with that being said, I thought the cinematography was pretty good actually. It's really not a bad looking movie, and the direction and the editing were very solid as well. They played it pretty safe as far as that part was concerned, didn't do anything all that creative, but I can't really complain about that because it was still very well handled for the most part. And I really only have one genuine complaint as far as the overall execution here goes. And it had to do with how they decided to incorporate one certain element into the movie. They just didn't have the money or the resources to pull it off seamlessly. So it just didn't feel convincing or real, and that sort of pulled me out of the movie for a moment. Now that's only really one scene, so it's not really a big deal, but I feel like that could have been handled better. But as I said, that is really the only notable issue I had with this movie in general. Most other things were just smaller issues that I could forgive a bit more easily. And I was actually pretty impressed with how rich in detail this was and how realistic a lot of it felt. Because, for instance, they used a lot of real animals when they hunted and prepared them. Which I guess could be an issue for some people, but it just brought a sense of realism into this that most movies lack. And in general, I did think this was a somewhat suspenseful and intriguing movie. However, I would say that about 95% of it was just okay and not much more than that. And when the end of the movie was approaching, I was already pretty much convinced I'd have to give this something like a 5, maybe a low 6. But then the actual end came around, and you know what? They went all out with it. Things just escalated beyond anything I could have possibly imagined. They took it to a whole nother level, and I really loved what they did with it. It's rare that an ending is this much better than the rest of the movie. Usually if a movie is great, the ending might be great, or it might be a letdown. But if a movie is mediocre, rarely is the ending anything special. But this one is. To the point that I wish the rest of the movie was better, then the experience overall would have been great. But hey, I'll take what I can get, and if a great ending I did not expect to experience is what I can get, then I'll take it. And the thing is, just about everything about the ending is better than the rest of the movie. I mean, the acting from the mom played by Camille Sullivan was perfect. She wasn't bad in the rest of it, but she just knocked it out of the park with the end. The effects for the last sequence were great too, like unexpectedly great out of nowhere. And I just loved the way it was shot and edited too, it all just came together perfectly. So yeah, I don't know how they pulled it off, but this is one of the strongest endings I've seen in a while. Now, to be fair, tonally, it did feel a tad bit out of place. It didn't quite fit with the rest of the movie. But to its credit, the motivations and how it set certain things up earlier did again work perfectly. As crazy and insane as it got, it still made sense. Like it came out of nowhere, but it had secretly laid the groundwork for it. And well, I don't know what else to say. It's a rather mediocre and fairly blandish but okay movie with an ending that is anything but mediocre and bland. And as a result, I'm a bit torn about what sort of score I'm supposed to give it, but I'm leaning toward a low 7. Boop. Now, would I recommend it? Well, that's a tough question, but I guess I would, yeah. But if you do give it a shot, definitely don't turn it off early if it's not really doing much for you. You gotta stick around for the grand finale or you're doing yourself a disservice. So you know, maybe check it out or maybe don't. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel because that would be fantastic.